This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz. Very excited to be speaking with Erin Moriarty about The Boys. How are you, Erin?
I'm really good. How are you?
Good. We got to have a conversation, I think it was almost a year ago now, about Catching Dust, which I
Yeah.
think is fair to say is a slightly lower profile project than The Boys.
It's true. I love to diversify. Obviously, it's really fun to do that. And I loved that project. It was very close to my heart. But yeah, no, it's surreal to be speaking to you in a moment that's very ephemeral, or it's very bittersweet. We're about to wrap the show. So I'm literally speaking to you as I rush home from set and Annie and put on Aaron.
Well, I appreciate your time. This show, I feel like, is becoming more and more relevant with the themes that it's covering. And I feel like, there's a subset of the fan base that maybe didn't realize that this is always what this show has been about. How have you sort of engaged with that? Do you feel like there's a split, two different groups of people?
I for like the two different groups of people is not something I have been privy to. I sort of have learned from Eric Kripke to do the work and put it out into the zeitgeist and take a step away, which seems sort of impossible, but becomes conditioned into you. If you're on a show that's topical like this, it's going to naturally evoke conversation that is polarizing, as is the nature of the show, ironically. And so I think that, and as is the plot line of the show, ironically or unironically, however you look at it. So I feel like, part of the benefit of not being a writer is also the downside of not being a writer. I can't take credit for the popularity and the topical nature of the show, right? But I also leave it to them to address the fact that it's become, as we've said in this campaign, or as we've said, as we've done press lately, it's not a documentary. And I don't think Kripke, or I know for a fact that Eric Kripke and our writers, our amazing writers, didn't want to will this into happening, or any of these plot lines that are mirroring what's going on in real life. We never would want that to come to fruition. Yet it's become a fortunate catharsis for us. So it's this weird simultaneous moment where we're feeling, I think all of us, conflicted about the current matters that are transpiring in front of us, and grateful to have this outlet. And I feel like that's being caught, or that's being reflected in the popularity of the show that we never anticipated to happen in the way that it has.
Well, I think also it's interesting that Annie, I feel like, is the person that if the seven was real and if, V and all that, we would want to have because she's always sort of been
Mm.
one of the good guys. Do you see it that way also?
I do. It's been really kind of almost therapeutic for me, because to play a character that to me is so unambiguously the good guy, or the good guy within this world that we've created, which is very gray, right? So that makes it more interesting to me. It's not black and white. She is the gray good guy. Um, I have observed from an external perspective, because whilst I play her, I very much don't see me as her, of course. Um, that if she's existing in a world where people are so calculated, where people have so many ulterior motives, where there's so much disingenuine nonsense going on, just by earnestly trying to do good and look at every opportunity, every room that she walks into, every obstacle she takes on, every micro and macro situation she takes on. She wants to leave this room or this situation better than it was when she entered it. Determines who she is on the show, which is the good guy, as opposed to perhaps like the outcome of her actions. It gets diluted and it gets complicated, and she questions her own identity. And I think that provides us with a character that is more than the standard ingenue. And that's what makes her come to life for me. That's made her so interesting, and so nuanced in a way that I've not yet seen in this superhero world, similar to a lot of the topical matters that we take on in this sugar makes the medicine go down sort of formula.
It is also fun to see her like firmly on the other side now, where it just starts the season and it's like she is part of the mission. It's happening. It's no more
Mhm.
pretending that she's not doing this. And I
But
feel
it's
like for
cool
you that
because
made
no, I'm so sorry to interrupt. No, I'm just going to say it's cool because we expect her to like, we expect her to sort of thrive as soon as she exits that scenario. And then we realize she's still conflicted, right? So it doesn't end. There's no neat bow, there's no resolve as soon as we think there's going to be one, which I think is so refreshing because as humans, having this human experience, we don't have that, right? So I remember as a kid watching these shows or watching these movies that had that more formulaic bow wrapped around the ending, or these female characters specifically that would maybe you'd put them in a box and either you would put them in a box or their storyline in a box. And I didn't feel like they would break out of that. And then you feel like you break out of that on a daily basis. So where does that leave you? So she's doing that in a way that I find to be just fun to play. Once again, I give credit to the writers.
Speaking of female characters, it's fun to see her with Firecracker and the way that they really just do not get along. And that another character that in a lot of ways echoes things that we're seeing in real life, but is very clever and knows exactly how she wants to achieve her objectives and take down her enemies.
Yeah, it was really interesting to find out that history between those two. And I didn't have a problem with not being aware of it because I thought, well, Annie is truly and honestly, it's not like she's not existing in front of this character, Firecracker, with the fabric of her past and her present still integrated into her, but she's able to embody the fact that you are not what your worst actions are. And I think that that was really cool to see because even I was surprised when I first read it and I had to check myself. But you're not. And you're determined, the who you are is determined by other things. And so to see that play in front of us once again is just quite, cool. And the antithesis of what I have seen and also my perception of her. But I think it's cool to constantly keep the audience surprised, not arbitrarily, but in a way that is morally justified, because we're all just humans ultimately on this show, and that kind of ironically.
Well, I also enjoyed the shapeshifter twist towards the end of the season and just how mad Annie was at Huey that he didn't realize that this was not her.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I think, listen, this is an emotional moment for Annie, right? When you think about her own perspective, which is my job, right? I think about the perspective of this character and what she's been through thus far, and the fact that she has been through the process of getting into the seven, which is the group that she worshipped, having going through sexual abuse herself, being manipulated, being controlled, trying to do good from the inside out, breaking free of that, then just going through this manipulation of public perception via the hands of the evil character on our show and what she's been through up until this moment. And then she has a shapeshifter steal her body, propose to her boyfriend, the love of her life, who is the symbol of good that she has. So I'm sort of like, she's seen some shit as well. So she's had this accumulative rage and angst and sadness built on her that of course it's justified that she's going to feel like her emotional reactivity is sharpened and acute. Anyone would under these circumstances, right? And are they going to emotionally react in ways that are appropriate? No one is going to, but she's doing pretty well considering, and she does maintain her, in my mind, as far as the show is concerned, in relative terms, the heroic status that so many lose on the show. But it was fun, and it was such an enjoyable experience. It was an enjoyable experience more so after the fact. It was very anxiety provoking before, but mostly because it's such a group endeavor. When you get to the point where you're reading a script where the shapeshifter is a plot point, I become abundantly aware that this is about so much more than myself, right? This is about the fact that I show up every day and there are set designers putting in hours of work. There are writers putting in hours of work. And it's not just for me, it's for this character, and doing her emotional justice is so that like Eric Kripke, who's someone who I look up to more than most people in the world, I do him justice. I do every single person who's worked up until this moment justice. And so when it came to that Huey, moment, everyone is justified in their emotional reactivity, and then everyone is has moments where they're wrong or they're right. And so for me, I'm looking at it from the micro perspective of myself, Erin, and doing my crew proud or doing them justice for the work they've put in, and the writers and this character justice.
There also are some really insane, just like wild moments on this show. And I feel like Annie isn't really as much a part of them as a lot of the other characters, certainly Huey in this season with the web weaver thing and all of that. Do you feel like you've been a little more absent from that stuff? And even so, like, what is the wildest thing that you think you've had to film on the course of this
I
show
mean,
for
I
four
have
seasons
to
only?
say, in four seasons, yeah, of course I would never. I have to say, being one of two characters, which was myself and Mother's Milk, who are the only common denominators of every single day on Herogasm, I feel like I've had my rite of passage and I've seen it all. When you've seen your coworker and your really good friend, like your brother, who is Laz Alonso, be blasted from a cannon of human what are we going to call it, release, that's like your rite of passage. I have seen it all. When I showed up to that Herogasm house and we were on day 3 and I was going to the bathroom, I remember one day, and I didn't lock the door, and I remember looking at the door and thinking, everyone has seen everything they could have possibly seen this week. That would be the least of their worries. Was I walked in? I don't know, but that's where my head was at day 3 of Herogasm, right? I was seeing so many things that eventually I just started to stare at a wall, because I thought, if I just look down and I'm tired and I just stare into space, my eyes are going to fall on something. I'm going to make eye contact with someone and it's going to be an awkward moment. I learned the hard way because everything is everywhere. So I feel like that became sort of Laz and I, that was a trauma bond between us. That doesn't negate the bonding of that moment. But once you've seen that, like that web weaver stuff was foreplay relative to the main event. It was quite an experience, but it was hilarious and I loved it. And I just, yeah, seen a lot of dildos in the past 7 years now.
Well, I do not have a good transition to my next question, which has nothing to do with dildos and any sort of hilarity. But I feel like with real life, it's easy to sort of get very dismayed about what's ahead here for this show. The ending of season 4 is not at all optimistic, and I feel like while there have been some wins over the course of the show, it always feels like Homelander just comes in there and rips someone's head off and like derails things a little. Is there hope for season 5, and will audiences feel a sense of satisfaction, or are we still in for a relatively brutal ride with some entertainment along the way?
I think all of the above, to put it simply. I think that just when you're expecting one thing, at this point to expect something else. So I think creating a show that's completely devoid of hope would be one dimensional. And we've been all about keeping it multidimensional. And once again, not arbitrarily, but in a way that feels emotionally justified and character driven. So all the above.
I don't want this to lead into a potential spoiler for season 5, but is there anybody that you feel like you didn't have a chance to work with over the course of the show and you really would have liked to share more scenes with?
Hmm. That's a good question. Gosh, I'm trying to rack my brain because it's been so many seasons and we're just about to complete another one, and so much happens. But I would say that for me, a lot of the real fun stuff is playing the tension of the characters. And I loved being sort of undercover, pseudo, well, not pseudo, totally undercover when I was working for the Seven. So, however that manifests, I want to keep playing with that tension between myself, the good versus the evil. So I would love to keep playing that. So that's not specific character because I'm surely going to say something and then I end up giving away unintentionally or inadvertently some spoiler because so much happens every season. But playing with that tension, and then also keeping in mind that the good versus the evil in our show is so gray. So how can we play along? How can we play with those lines and still give into the tension between my character and the quote unquote bad ones? So yeah, continuing on that.
5 seasons is certainly a pretty impressive run, but I know that there's always a chance that resurrection, even if characters are killed and shows being brought back, do you feel like you're ready to say goodbye to Annie, or if there was a chance to play her again, you would jump at that?
I will never feel ready to say goodbye to her. And I know I say that now. And listen, we're 5 seasons in, and I'm at the tail end of 5 seasons. And the hardest part of this is for me to say goodbye to her. I think that taking a break from her, as with anything, will give me clarity of mind. It's going to make me realize what I took for granted. It's going to make me realize the little things I missed. But right now, I'm living in a moment that is so ephemeral because we're so at the tail end of such an epic era that it's mandating presence. And I think the hardest part for me is saying goodbye to her. And I think the hardest part for me is saying goodbye to her within this specific context because I think I'm aware that, or I know that I'm aware that whilst she can live in other dimensions and other universe, or not in another universe, but another spinoff rather, it's never going to be within this context, which is the context that gave birth to the other spinoffs. And there's something magical about that, and there's something irreplaceable and just very special about it. So it's what made the show what it is and what makes it what it is. You know, is the people I'm around every day. So I am very much in a moment where every single second I'm sort of even on hour 17 trying to really really be present with it and grateful, and I am. It's taking no effort because how often do you get the opportunity to play a character like this in a show like this, and how often do you get the opportunity to be aware of your minutes that are counting down? That is such a fortunate position to be in, and it's not lost on me. So I'm running home from set and I'm reflecting on the day in a way that, like, in so many ways is an anomaly, you know. So it's sad, it's very bittersweet. That being said, I've worked on it since I was 23. I'm going to wrap it when I'm 31. So of course it's a chapter that needs to conclude, like all do, but I will miss her forever, and I'll miss my family on the show forever.
You know what you're doing next?
um uh yes, and I can't elaborate on that because that's the fun of my industry, I guess. Yes, period.
Very well.
I hope to be talking to you about it again in probably 2 years at this point.
Well, hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about season five before then, because when I say I don't want
Yeah, of
spoilers, I
course,
want them
of
eventually. I
course.
want to talk,
Oh
want to
yes,
talk about
yes,
everything,
that's well put.
unpack it all.
I'm still in
Well,
denial, I guess.
what are you watching these days? What have you seen recently on TV that's really impressing you?
I mean, listen, I am like a cliche at the moment. I watched White Lotus because what I'm working on all day, I need something that is stimulating but not going to how do I say this? It's so the storyline is just pure escapism, but in a really clever way. So I love that show. I think it's kind of I think the fact that every season is its own anthology is really brilliant. I think all the characters were brilliant. I think Walton Goggins is brilliant. It's a masterclass in acting, but it also provides you with that sort of like that poppy escapism you need. So that would be it. Because when I show up at the end of every day to my couch and it's going to be something like that is cerebral and dense, I'm not going to be there. I'm not going to show up to that. I need something that's going to be really well done but accessible intellectually. Do you know what I mean?
No, I very much appreciate that. I'm excited to get to think now about whatever's ahead for season five, and I do have a little bit of hope. Now, you haven't given me enough hope to make sure that I'll definitely be, happy, but I'm sure I'll be dramatically satisfied if nothing else.
Listen, I'm in Toronto as we speak, right? And you know that my character means that she's been one of the very few common denominators representing hope each season. So there's a little bit of hope this season. You know that. Or not. Maybe I've been the shifter this whole time.
There you go. Well,
Or not. You never know
I
on this show.
thank you so much for your time, Erin. It's been a real
Thank you so
pleasure.
much. Likewise.